and again, for a little bit of context, our program committee suggested a panel like this, because if you were with us last month, we had essentially an HR panel talking about the challenges of COVID and from a management perspective, and we thought it'd be good to get a union perspective on this. We're a year out. It's been a year since our worlds were turned upside down and the first COVID cases happened, and Governor DeWine first closed schools and then closed the bars and restaurants. But we also know that we have a lot of people that, including the folks that Randy represents as frontline workers, who never had an opportunity to transition to remote work. So we put together a panel of union leaders to share their perspective on some of the biggest challenges that they've faced over the course of the last year. What are some of the things that COVID has done to build union strength and opportunities for growth? And what are some of the challenges moving forward and lessons learned from this experience? So we have Anthony Caldwell with SEIU District 1199. He is the Executive Vice President. He's also the Political Affairs Director for SEIU and serves as a member of the local school board in Southwestern City Schools and a personal friend. So good to have you with us, Anthony. We have Randy Quickle. Randy is the president of UFCW Local 1059. And Randy has been president for the last almost 11 years and leader in the local labor movement, again, representing frontline workers and others here in Central Ohio, and can talk a little bit more about himself. And then we also have Cindy Love. Cindy is with the Columbus Education Association. She is a staff consultant, started her career as a teacher, Spanish language teacher, and then she was a consultant with the PAR program, which is the Peer Assistance and Review Program. And then a couple of years ago, she was brought onto President John Coniglio's team and has been the spearhead in terms of the district's Health and Safety Committee, which is something, and Cindy can tell us a little bit more, something that CEA negotiated for in their collective bargaining agreement with the district. So, so she has been kind of the point person on the union side for that work. So let me turn it over to Anthony first. Anthony, if you want to just talk a little bit about what's this last year been like for SEIU?
Thanks, Scott, and thanks, everyone. It's been incredibly difficult for our members and workers who have had to continue to work every day through this pandemic. We represent healthcare and social service workers in West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio. And so our members who work in the state prisons providing healthcare services have never had, a day to have the privilege of working from home. Our nursing home workers all across our 3 states have gone to work every day and have had to do so without proper protective equipment or even proper staffing in a lot of facilities. Our hospital workers across our 3 states, same thing. It's been incredibly challenging for the members of our union to not have the staffing, the protective equipment, and honestly the pay that they feel like they need to continue to provide the care and services they do during these incredibly challenging times. And I was just talking with a worker yesterday. She said, my boss gave me a t-shirt that said I'm a hero, but yet on my paycheck, it's still showing 0. And that really hit hard for me to think that, she's been providing care throughout this entire thing as a nursing home worker in Cleveland and never received a dime in pandemic pay or hero pay or hazard pay, whatever you want to call it, and had to bring in her own masks and other things just to make sure that she was keeping herself safe throughout this whole pandemic. So it's been incredibly challenging for our members. We have had some workers who have been blessed to have remote work privileges. Some state of Ohio employees that we represent have had that opportunity. And then we've had other members that have faced layoffs or partial layoffs. using the Shared Work Ohio program, where they had an hours reduction so that they could continue to work some hours, but yet still receive partial unemployment compensation. And so we've been all over the board as far as trying to help members through this incredible, difficult time. And Scott mentioned that I'm also a school board member. And as my good friend Burl mentioned earlier, that's also been a challenge. I have this hybrid responsibility in my life where my day job is representing workers and the members of our union. And then my other activity is being on the management side and trying to make sure that we're providing educational resources in a safe environment and in a way that keeps our students, staff, and community safe. And so it's just been, I would say, challenging is the short word for the last year.
Thank you, Anthony. Randy?
Yes, hi, my name's Randy Quickle. As been said, I'm the president of UFCW 1059. I have been that president for about 11 years, as it was said, and we have about 20,000 members. I recently, you may have seen me on Channel 4 News just the other day talking of similar kinds of issues that we've experienced, and I just wrote down from an email that we've kept track of. Just within our 20,000 members, who predominantly it's in the retail, but we also have food manufacturing, and we have healthcare units that go into people's homes and do some healthcare, as well as the Red Cross. We've had 1,442 people come down with the virus. We've also unfortunately had 3 deaths. And for some of us, hopefully nobody on this call that thinks this pandemic is coming to closure, we've had 3 new ones just this week as far as exposed. So our concern, and the concern of the majority of our members who are in the front lines, as was said, is at the beginning of this, not having enough equipment to put in front of them, getting the companies to pay hero pay, whatever they wanted to call it, hazard pay, and then them abandoning that and making huge profits off the backs of all of this, and the stress from each and every day, those members going to work and working under the stress of, am I going to get the virus? Am I going to take it home? All of that. It's been quite a negative experience for our members as well as everyone else. And I can tell you, I'll tell you this group this, I too had COVID. I didn't have it for very long. I had it for about a week. I didn't have that much problem with it. But I am a heart person. I have a heart problem. I had a heart problem in my history, and I'm a diabetic. So these concerns also happen in the field for all of our members. And I have some more things to talk about later if indeed we get to the sample questions. But that's where I'll leave it at now. So I do want to keep saying to everyone, as I pleaded earlier in this, to make sure you wear your mask when you go in the stores. I'm sure you all are, and frequent things, because we're not past this yet. So that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Randy. Cindy, can you talk a little bit about your perspective and how this has been for members and the teachers in Columbus?
Well, thank you, Scott. Hello, everybody. As Scott said, it's been a year since Governor DeWine closed our schools. And interestingly enough, this is the first week that many of our Columbus students have returned to any school building. So been out for almost a solid year. Lots of attempts at getting students back. Sadly, rising COVID numbers in our community, sometimes stopped that. The CEA represents over 4,000 members, and we serve over 50,000 students. Most of them, obviously facing tremendous inequity in their life. One of the issues that we've dealt with isn't just teachers being, home remote, but also the challenges that the students face in order to carry out the work. So for example, technology issues, inequities our students face, food, technology, access to the internet, everything has made remote work extremely challenging. based off numerous societal issues that we're dealing with, not only with COVID, but just in general. Our teachers have wanted to go back. We've maintained one stance, only when safe. We were lucky that we had just recently, the year before COVID shut us down, had bargained a new contract. And in that contract, we won some really strong health and safety language, which helped our union navigate COVID possibly maybe better than some other locals did. And hopefully I can share some of that with you as we get started.
Yeah, thanks. And actually that's a good segue to my next question. And I just have a couple questions, and I'm going to want to open it up to everybody else to jump in with their questions. But I am interested in hearing from each of you, given the incredible challenges that the workers that each of you represent have faced that you described. How have you well, first off, have you been able to leverage collective bargaining language in the contract or negotiation of new contract language in order to address health and safety issues for members or other kinds of economic and other concerns of members? Like how is each of your unions, and I know you may not all be the same because especially for Anthony and Randy, you're representing people in a variety of settings with a variety of employers. But if you can talk a little bit about how you've been able to leverage collective bargaining through this crisis. And let me ask whoever wants to go first to jump in.
I could go first, Scott.
Go ahead, Cindy. Yeah.
You know, Columbus in 2019, the spring, waged a long contract battle. We coined it the Schools Columbus Deserves. One of those platforms in our contract proposals was health and safety and proper maintenance of buildings. For a long time, you know, I know as a teacher and then sitting here in this office, we were receiving all kinds of concerns, pictures, photos from members about issues that really dealt with facilities such as mold, air quality problems, rodent, pest infestations, plumbing. So the original intent when we went to the table was to bargain strong health and safety language to try and get, you know, some language in there to get those types of issues fixed. So when we ratified the contract in August of 19, the foundation was set. We had already established the language for a joint labor health and safety committee. We also negotiated and won a dispute and resolution process for health and safety issues that put enforceable timelines around those complaints and concerns. So when our team had to go back to the table to negotiate MOUs, which in total, I think CEA team has been back at the table during COVID 5 times since the school closure. And each time trying to prepare for the eventual return of staff and students. And because of the work that was done prior to COVID, I think our MOUs, I'm quite proud of those MOUs, even before the vaccine, we felt that the language in the contract was extremely strong. We were able to negotiate and put in the contract over 10 really strong mitigation type strategies that the educators who are in the building could rely on, and even, you know, go through something similar as a grievance process if in fact these things that were negotiated in the MOUs were not done. So, you know, for that, we felt confident. Like, obviously the vaccine has added a new twist, but we had such good language based off work done in the past that I think our staff, while reluctant to go, and rightfully so, as a union, I feel like we gave them the best we could possibly give them in coming back to an unknown situation.
Thank you. Can you just give one specific example of the kind of complaint that a member may have raised related to facilities or health and safety issues, and kind of just talk us through like an example of a complaint that came through the process and how that was resolved, just to get an illustration of this.
Are you talking about like pre-pandemic or post?
Either.
Okay, because prior to the pandemic, we would get, we made it a written process. It almost looks like a 3-step, almost like a grievance process. We have been able to, through this process, have things like plumbing. So we had somebody who had plumbing backing up an art teacher, this raw or whatever, the sewage, the pipes blowing up in their classroom. Prior to this process, it could take forever to get something like this fixed. And the teacher was pretty much out of the loop. It was something they'd report to the principal, and then everybody would just wait. The process that we designed is where the complainant can, they report it to the administrator. The administrator has 3 days to respond back in writing. Hopefully with a work order number, hopefully something is accelerated and gets done. If it's not satisfied, it escalates to another level, upper facility management. For example, people that were unaware and uninvolved prior to this, to get some traction, to get things done. And fortunately, I can say, I think the process.
Oh, you just muted yourself.
I was gonna say, even with COVID, we're getting concerns just about supplies even. I've run out of wipes. I want a health and safety data sheet. They're putting it in writing, transmitting it to administrator. It's usually getting resolved pretty informally. Their wipes are there. They can get the safety data sheet. All of this was bargain language. It seems to be a process that is working. We've not had anything, fortunately, overly serious at this point where it's, been having to go to the ultimate level, which is referring it to like PERP. But it is a process. It's getting the members involved, administration involved, solving these issues at the building where hopefully they can be solved, and if not, giving other recourse for it. So our whole COVID MOU is based off these strategies, the same idea.
I can definitely see how that would set up as people are coming back and you've got more in-person instruction, that if there's a specific issue that's on that list of the 10 mitigating strategies that's missing, then you've got this process already in place with timelines for those issues to be resolved, which I'm sure is very helpful. Anthony or Randy, you want to talk a little bit about how you've been able to bargain through some of these issues with your locals?
Randy, you want to go first?
Go ahead, Anthony. I'll follow up in behind you.
All right. Well, first, I just want to give kudos to you, President Quickle. My wife and my daughter are both UFCW members of Local 1059. And so I just appreciate everything that you do for your membership, because that keeps me safe too. So kudos to you and your union. This has been incredibly challenging as far as representation too. I told you who we represent. We represent healthcare and social service workers in a lot of places that have been denied access to the general public even during this pandemic. And so providing representation to a nursing home when you can't go inside the facility, or a hospital when you can't go inside the facility, or to healthcare workers within a prison system when you can't go inside the facility and actually work with your members has been incredibly challenging. And then on top of that, having just lots of resistance from employers. At the beginning of the pandemic, we all know that PPE was scarce, but it was actually on lockdown in a lot of our facilities, where our nursing home workers were going to administrators and saying, I need a mask or I need a gown, because we didn't know what level of protective equipment you needed at that time. And the administrators were saying, well, just keep wearing the same mask over and over again. We have all of our supplies locked up behind a closed door, and you don't have access to it. And that wasn't just in March and April. That continued even until now, where workers have consistently had to go back to their supervisors and plead for proper protective equipment to keep them safe in all levels of facilities. And I know my OCSCA brothers and sisters can relate to that too in their membership. And so that's been one of the biggest challenges, is access to representation. We have had our staff in parking lots of facilities with pop-up tents in the dead cold of February, because that was the only way that we could meet with our members in a safe, socially distanced way. Masks, heavy coats, in a pop-up tent in a parking lot to try to do that. And so when we could get those employers to the table, when we forced those employers to the table, we were able to negotiate memorandums of understanding to get additional pay and additional protective equipment. And there are some that here we are a year later, and we're still fighting with them to do the right thing. I won't call any employers out on this meeting, but there's one specific employer that we're dealing with right now that has about 8 nursing homes, and they are still refusing to provide protective equipment to their workforce, telling them that they should bring that in from home to keep themselves safe. So it's been exceptionally challenging for those workers who are providing incredible care and services to these folks. I don't know how much experience people in this meeting have had in a nursing home, but if you have a total care patient, knowing the level of intimacy that goes into providing that care and doing so with what you don't know is adequate protective equipment is exceptionally scary and frightening for those workers when they're just trying to do, their jobs. And I will just say, also not for a lot of money. Many of those workers making under $15 an hour with health insurance plans that are not all that great, and really costing them a lot of out of pocket. And and I know that the other labor folks on this meeting can relate to this, but just knowing that it doesn't just stop at the door when you leave the facility. You have to decontaminate yourself when you go home to make sure that your family is safe, and that those that you come in contact with in your daily lives are safe. And it's just it's been an exceptionally scary year. And while we can see that light at the end of the tunnel, my friend President Quickle is right. We need to continue to practice good mitigation techniques. Keep your distance, wear your mask, wash your hands, and please, 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 when it's your turn, get a vaccine.
Thank you.
Let me kind of, Anthony hit and Cindy both hit on some good points, and some things that we all shared, even though our membership may be varying. I have a staff members here, staff grouping that services all of our stores and plants. So not only are our members on the front line, my staff is on the front line as well as myself and the directors that go in. At the beginning of this pandemic, everybody's resources as PPE was scarce, if none of the above. And as on the phones with almost all of our employers at one point in time, high-level officials from the companies that we deal with, and pleading, demanding, screaming, whatever you want to say in regard to getting the PPE in place. We too have one facility that cares for, it's not a nursing home, but cares for people in their homes and such. It went to the part that, I have a pretty vast array of help that I can get out to. Anyways, I'm getting to the fact that I got them masked myself, provided mask myself to that facility. The others at that point in time, later into the pandemic, that the major companies were able to start supplying it better. But the things that has surprised me through this, the things that you would think would just be common sense, and I know there was a lot of problems from other employees, the things that you would take as just a given as common sense was really a struggle sometimes to get it to communication with the companies and whatnot like that. Companies talk about heroes, companies talk about this thing. Talk is talk. It's what you do and what you, I hearken back to a lot of it's what you do, not what you say. and it was struggles sometimes to get things up and going. As I've already said, the strength of the membership out there in this pandemic, it makes it hard every day that people are walking in at various times in this, not wearing a mask or whatever. One of the most common sense things that I thought that I struggled with was speaking to our retail employers, large retail employers, going, you should demand people coming into those stores to wear a mask. I also told that to the governor in a discussion regarding that. And to me, that was just common sense. But, there's problems regarding around that and at the very beginning. So what we're doing, and I'm just getting ready Monday, and I'm not going to identify the company, but set up negotiations this Monday that are a year from where we should have been, because I understand in this format of Zoom is really good for these kind of calls and stuff like that. But I'm not going to call myself old, but I'm a senior person that enjoys seeing eye contact and having that. And I did not want to Zoom negotiations. So we've come up with a different thing that we can be in two separate rooms, and I'm starting those negotiations tomorrow, next Monday, with that company. I also did make sure that I'm going to be able to retro all that money back to where it should have been when we get our raises going forward. And what we're doing, we just concluded at that, it's not a nursing home, but a facility such that we just did a contract there with them recently. And what we did putting in there was a state of emergency language that, nobody could foresee this pandemic coming. But now it's happened. Now we would be remiss if we didn't try to get some language going forward for anything that comes into there, and not relying on the good graces, for lack of a better term, of the companies coming up and saying, hey, we're going to pay you this amount, or whatever the case may be. And then when they chose, just go, hey, we're not going to do that anymore, because we had no recourse for that. So we're going to try to take care of that. Negotiations are just that. So we'll have some various degrees of success regarding that. But it's been stressful on all ends. And like I said earlier, and I think everybody agree, and hope everybody, we're not done yet. We got to keep the vigilance of the mask and play this through until we get to an end. I myself, just last Friday, was able to get vaccinated. And I was fortunate enough, in my opinion, to get the Johnson & Johnson. So I was one and done. So, and suffered really no ill effects of it. But that's what I have regarding that answer to that question right now. Thanks.
No, thank you. If you have a question, if you just put your name or just indicate in the chat that you want to ask a question, I'll try to monitor the chat and call people in order. We'll use that instead of the hand raising function, just because I can't see everybody, so I might miss some people that way. But before I turn it over to anybody else that has questions, Randy, you alluded to the conversation that you had with the governor, and
I was
going to say a lot of what we're dealing with is the interaction with employers and trying to persuade, in our role as union reps, to get employers to do the right thing. But the policies and the tone, the messages that come from leadership, whether you're talking about the President of the United States or the governor of the state of Ohio or others, I think makes a difference. Do you want to comment a little bit further about things that the government did, whether at the state or federal level, that were particularly helpful, and maybe really missed opportunities to do things to help you protect your members?
I think on this regard, the governor of Ohio, this is my opinion here, okay? The governor of Ohio, although I do not share his political beliefs regarding that, but I think he did a pretty admirable job through the pandemic. But some of the things that I was that I was concerned with was the speed and for which he acted on things. The most recent thing that I was on NBC just the other day talking about was to me, again, I feel not just for my membership that are in the front lines, I feel that those individuals that's been on the front line should have had their opportunity first, get into the front of the lines of getting vaccines, not waiting in regards to, I got to be 50 years old, I got this or that. That was some of the things that I think that he wasn't quick on. He also wasn't quick, I don't believe, in regards to mandating mask wearing. At the beginning of this, if he had mandated that earlier, then, we could have saved some lives possibly. And the mandate is, whether some people are always going to be hesitant to follow the lead, if you will. But if you forbid them to go into places, they're going to have to come around. And that's my opinion regarding that. Now, I don't want to say that at any point in time was I one-on-one speaking with the governor. I was not. And in some instances, I was speaking through his people in regards to there. But all in all, I think the governor did a better than adequate job regarding his direction there. Like I said, I don't agree with his politics, but I just wish he would have been a little bit more quickly to respond to things than what he was. And I wish he would be quicker in regards to the vaccinations for our frontline members and everybody else's frontline members. They've been putting it on the line for a long period of time. They should have had the ability to jump in front of some people or right along with them to get the vaccination as well.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Anthony or Cindy, anything you wanted to add in terms of where you think state government and the governor in particular could have done better?
Well, I mean, we have the opposite experience clearly than Randy's folks. Teachers were moved up by Governor DeWine. We were eligible to get the vaccine. Clearly grateful for that. If I had to say, that there was something wrong, I do think the concern is that he dangled a date of March 1st out there as though it was the be all and end all, which was kind of unwinding some of we had been out for a year. If a vaccine was going to be offered, why not, first of all, wait till your staff could be fully vaccinated? I mean, it was kind of contradictory before sending them back in the building. But I know that we had not made any plans in Columbus to have grades 6 to 12 come back to school. Right now we were focusing on blended learning for certain particular groups back in the buildings. I feel like the vaccine was a complete acceleration of return dates, a lot of pressure to get back. I know my district was one that I was publicly called out on TV for not having everyone back by, March 1st. And yet we were bringing people back. So, I mean, while grateful for the vaccine and absolutely positively thankful for it, I'm not sure. I think the plan could have been in better alignment with each individual school district's plans to return.
Yeah, thanks. Anthony?
Inconsistent. This governor and this administration have just been inconsistent, especially when it comes to their own workforce. State employees who were, a lot of them were just kind of forgotten in this whole process when infection rates were, accelerating within our prisons and mental health hospitals. Those folks were often looked at as expendable. That because there are incarcerated individuals, that those lives didn't matter, and that the staff that were there, providing security and services to them, that they also didn't matter at the same level as, say, folks in the general community. And same with a lot of the healthcare institutions. It took a while for a lot of the state orders to come into place that actually prioritized them as folks that needed to receive more proper protective equipment. And then when every time that something new happened, it always seemed like there was just an inconsistent message between the governor, what he was doing for state employees and that we were encouraging folks to do in the general community. And as Randy mentioned earlier, we lost some members too, and we lost a couple of nursing home workers. We lost a nurse that works in the Franklin Medical Center, which is part of our state prison system here in Columbus. And it's just been really, really difficult for those folks. And the other piece, going back to talking about pandemic pay and hero pay, there is a provision in many of the state employee contracts that says that if a state of emergency is declared, that those state employees would receive emergency pay premium of $8 per hour. It's in our contract, it's in the OCSCA contract, it's in many of the other state employees contracts. And to this day, a year later, we are still litigating that grievance with the state of Ohio that has refused to pay a single dime in emergency pay to the 4,000 state workers that we represent. And I don't want to misquote OCSCA's membership, but I think it's like 24,000 state workers. But we're all still waiting for those workers to receive the compensation they deserve for continuing to serve the people of Ohio during this pandemic, even though they were giving inconsistent and sometimes contradictory support from the state. And so I have a lot of frustrations with the governor. I think that some of the public decisions that he made were helpful. The early closures, the mask mandates, the stay-at-home orders, all of that I think were really effective for flattening the curve early on. But right at the beginning of summer and until this day, it seems to be a lot of mixed messages and inconsistent leadership when it comes to this pandemic.
Thanks. And I'll just add, OEA also represents educators who work in the prison system, and that has been one of the biggest challenges for us, is that for exactly the reasons that you're describing. So Kathleen and Jack have our first question, I believe. Go ahead.
Thank you for your presentations. As a consumer, I share the frustrations for all of the workers that you represent. A grocer last week told us that the Ohio Governor DeWine has revoked essential worker status for grocery workers. And I don't know what the status is with other people you represent. I wonder, as a consumer, what can I do, and others in our community, what can we do to support your efforts? I write letters, but all of my representatives are unresponsive, shall we say, in the party that I don't belong to. And so I'm wondering, I'm really frustrated, and I wonder what I can do.
Randy?
Okay, I wasn't sure. So one, I appreciate your concern. Two, if it were, I would remember the people that aren't responding to you, even though when you have an opportunity and they're running for that office again, make sure you show up and vote, obviously. I appreciate the aspect of you going to the stores and they are frontline, wearing your mask and just being supportive. And I'm sure that we ran a radio ad for our membership in general at the very beginning of the pandemic. And I pleaded with the consumers then to go in and tell people that, thank you for doing what you're doing. So I can appreciate that. I think on the political end, you just need to stay active and keep pounding the doors and make sure, as we just recently did, that you vote.
Thanks. Gary, you have the next question.
Thank you. I sympathize with all of you. When I worked with the American Postal Workers Union, this pandemic is very, very similar to the anthrax experience that we went through in the early 2000s. And it was just very much a threat like this flu. Anthrax, you can't see it. You don't know what it is. They kept telling us it's white powder. So people would look at any kind of white powder and go, there's anthrax in the building. But I understand what you're going through. It's a very frustrating time. And I think that the one way that I didn't hear, and it may be going on, that the unions aren't making an issue of this. Postal workers have been protesting for the last 8 years over this desire to privatize the post office. They have picketers out front in every building every day, and they have special days where they wear T-shirts that talk about this, closing the post office and how they make the public aware what's going on. The post service is very important to the public. The people that you represent are very important to the public. And if it's not advertised to the public, in my opinion, then the public who have to support you is not going to get behind you and support you. Someone made a comment about writing a letter. One person writing a letter isn't enough. You have letter writing campaigns, things of that nature. That, what politicians are politicians. They respond to a large number of complaints because they recognize they have a formula for example, what do 10 letters represent number of potential votes. So they have a formula. So it's important that you do this stuff. Keep it on the front line. In the air, we get it right. Letters to the editor, T-shirts, posters, and Randy, I think you had said something early on, and I just caught the phrase talk to talk. That's all they do. You've got to drive home the work to them that they need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And that's a good slogan on a T-shirt. Walk the walk. I'm walking the walk. Even an old thing that we came up with on a safety issue. They were talking about reducing number of accidents. We developed a thing where we lowered accidents, and they gave us a prize. And the ones that didn't, they didn't give anything. And one of our members came up with this slogan: "We've upped yours, now up yours," or "We've upped ours, now up yours." And a lot of people didn't understand what we were talking about, but it got them talking. We had to explain what that meant. It wasn't a derogatory thing. It was what we thought was good.
Gary, did you have a question that you wanted to ask? Because your comments actually are spurring a question for me.
Okay. Yeah, I have a question for Cindy.
Go ahead.
She had made a comment about safety reports, and I didn't understand what she said. If you submit a safety report and the management turns it down, says no, we're not going to do this. What is I didn't catch what's the union's response to that type of situation.
Okay, a couple things. Just one to your slogan. We did have a slogan in Columbus. I just want to say it was Columbus students deserve, and you could put anything behind that, like clean facilities, soap and water. So we did come up with a little hashtag there. And as far as the dispute resolution process, we divided it into 3 tiers. And the educator or the teacher in the building, the CEA member, we wanted it to be done in writing. The first step would be they would write their concern. They would address it to the building administrator. I mean, we have 110 buildings and over 4, all kinds of different layers of bureaucracy in the district. So most things go through the building administrator in our world. So if you had a plumbing issue, for example, they would write, we wanted it to go in writing to the building administrator with an enforceable time period, like how reasonable was it for the administrator to put in a work order, get something going on that issue. So the administrator would respond back to whoever filed the complaint within a specified period of time. In most instances, the problem is being resolved in that time frame. Does that make sense? They would get the problem resolved. However, if the problem wasn't resolved to the satisfaction of the person who did the filing, like who initially filed it, we've negotiated for them to be able to escalate it to now like the directors and supervisors of the building, like facility management, who 9 times out of 10 were unaware that these problems were even occurring in the building. Once they got involved, it's almost like a step 2, like almost grievance. Once they were involved, the whole idea was to have to get the problems fixed. And again, for those problems that we've had go to that level 2, all of the problems have been rectified at that level. If in case we can't get the problem fixed even at that level, at that point, we are then encouraging, or the member has a right to turn in the complaint to PERP, perhaps have them come out and, investigate or look, determine the seriousness of it. That would be ultimately the last step. It's a process, though, of trying to get things fixed through stages instead of just initially having a complaint sit idle somewhere. And that's what was happening. So it does wrap it into writing. It does have timelines, and it does have an escalation piece. And we've worked very hard on that, and it's actually working quite well.
Yeah.
Thank you for that information.
Thank you. We have just a few minutes left, and I want to give each of our panelists a chance for a final word. But before I do that, want to alert everyone's attention to the chat, just in case you haven't followed the chat. There is a link to a survey. We encourage everybody to provide feedback on today's session. We very much appreciate that. Our next COLERA luncheon, again, will be virtual, is on April 20th. We're going to be hearing from Stephen Carney from the Ohio Solicitor General's office, talking about the latest on legal issues related to labor management in the state. And then May 18th will be our last program of the year. And we will have an arbitrator panel. We will also have another guest speaker tentatively on the issue of family and medical leave, but be looking for more information on that. We are asking attorneys who are in need of CLE credit to make sure that you are listing your name and your attorney number in the chat, so that we can verify that you were here at the end of the program. So my parting question for our panelists, is there something through this whole experience, and we've definitely dealt with a lot of challenges, that has strengthened your union or otherwise gives you hope moving forward as we get to a point, and we're not there yet, clearly, but when we get to a point, we really turn the corner on the pandemic, and hopefully COVID's in the rearview mirror. Can you talk about how this experience maybe has strengthened your union, and is there any benefit, for your members, coming through this? Randy, why don't you start?
Great, thank you. Yeah, I will like to have a broad stroke here. I think it has strengthened our union regarding, hey, union is about togetherness and working for people and working to a goal. I also think with everybody here, this is a labor roundtable that we're here. So everybody should be focusing on labor, and unionism needs to spread. And how that needs to spread is because everybody coming together. We have shown our members, we've shown with this panel and different members groups what a union can do for you in regards to this, because I know personally we had to drag a few companies along here to get just the really necessary things that we need to do. We have negotiations coming up, but the strength is in numbers, and that's what somebody was speaking about earlier. And that strength from our union and other unions is to build throughout the community. Talk union, I know it may not be a popular conversation sometimes, but talk union, because union, that means everybody together can work and help us through all of this. It has to this point, it will for other fights that we have coming our way.
Thank you. Cindy, you want to go next?
Sure. CEA during COVID, it's interesting. Our membership has actually increased. I think it's increased obviously because we've had an intentional plan. COVID has been bad and a million things wrong. But from a certain perspective, COVID has provided the union with an opportunity to prove its value to membership. I think it's given the unions an opportunity to return to maybe health and safety, which has always been one of the fundamental missions and reasons for unions. And for some time, I don't know what happened, but perhaps that got shelved somewhere. And I think COVID could actually be an opportunity, and it is the opportunity for us to return back to that fundamental piece. I would suspect that everything with COVID in our members' minds, it's widened their lens. I just don't think it's about money and benefits anymore. Health and safety is definitely right up there.
Thanks, Cindy. Anthony.
Thanks, Scott. I'll take it back to Gary's question and comment. One thing that we have really learned and our members have learned is the value of concerted activity. We have found that doing actions, worksite actions has really been the thing that has moved the needle on these demands that our workers have had. And we have had, especially in the nursing home world, workers in front of facilities saying, respect us, protect us, and pay us. And those type of our media events and solidarity events have really gotten the attention of management and also the community, and having greater community support for that. The last thing that I would say is that we have intentionally spent this time where we've not been able to have the same type of worksite access, focusing on leadership development, looking for new delegates, looking for new folks that will step up and serve on representational teams or contract action teams, to serve on our contract negotiation committees, to serve on our health and safety committees. People are seeing now, to Cindy's point, that there is exceptional value in being part of the union, and that union is only as strong as the members that are engaged in it. And so we have spent this last year really building internal force that will help us bring the change that we all hope to see.
Yeah, thank you. So that brings us to the end of our hour. Please join me in thanking our panelists, Cindy Love, Randy Quickle, and Anthony Caldwell. You have given us a lot to think about, so I really appreciate your time. Thanks to all of you for being here, and I hope to see you again, on Zoom and hopefully before too long back in person at the Boathouse. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Scott.